by now, you must be living under a rock. A rock named St. Thomas, so I'm the cream of the crop. I rise to the top, I'm the king of hip-hop. 74 Eldorado. Intense TV. I'm your host, Robert Louis Tyler I, and today we have a very special episode of Television Intense TV Talk Show Live. We're going to have on our first guest today will be Jessica Loring, and she was recently, within a year or so, was giving a speech at the Pentagon and was also at the White House with Obama as well. I believe it's at the White House. We're going to find out more about that and some of her more famous relatives, in fact. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Very nice to be here, Robert.
Glad you could make it. And first of all, now we were going to talk about Lieutenant Alonzo H. Cushing, and you two were first cousins or related?
We're first cousins, but we're separated by 3 generations. So we're first cousins, 3 generations removed.
Got it.
His mother and my great-great-grandmother were sisters, and very close sisters. So we had family letters that were written back and forth from Alonzo and from his mother to my great-great-grandmother.
So the Cushings and the Lorings are right side by side up in there, right?
Yeah.
Nice. And so who was Alonzo Cushing, and where was he from?
He was
originally?
from initially Wisconsin for a few years. He was born up there. His parents were pioneers. And then they moved. Then his father had TB and died when Alonzo was 5 years old.
Oh, my.
So his mother raised the whole family, which 4 boys, 1 girl, by herself. And she moved down to where Milton, her husband's family, came from, a place called Westfield, New York, right by Lake Erie, and that's where she raised them. And she started a school and educated them. And she did a very good job and was able to get Alonzo, or helped Alonzo because he was intelligent, also into West Point. And another brother, William, went to the Naval Academy.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Because it's like kind of the mother of invention, necessity.
Yes.
I have to become a teacher now.
Yeah.
So, oh, wow, that is pretty well. So he received the Medal of Honor and Valor by the President of the United States a few years ago, right? And how did that feel to receive that? Finally, to receive this.
Finally, yes.
Honor.
It's probably the longest distance between the heroic deed and the Medal of Honor that has ever happened. It was 152 years. And usually you get a Medal of Honor within a year or 2 or fairly shortly thereafter. But a woman who lived on the property in Wisconsin worked on the family property, realized that the Cushings had lived there, and she did a lot of research and then lobbied senators to get the Medal of Honor for Alonzo, and she was finally successful, and she was well in her 90s when it happened, and she'd worked for 30 years. And she wasn't even related to the family. It was really impressive. Margaret Zerwig is her name.
And we have a copy of the award too for the Medal of Honor. Here it is up here.
Oh yes, yes.
And right down there it says Barack Obama on the right-hand side, signed by the President of the United States in 2014.
It really meant a tremendous amount to me to have Barack Obama sign that.
And this was just 3.5 years ago. This is pretty recent.
Yes.
It's very current too.
Yes.
And that is amazing. So that must have felt fantastic, right?
It did, because
elated.
It's so difficult to get a Medal of Honor that far after the deed has been done.
151 years later.
And then it was
after
blocked.
the fact.
Yes. And then it was blocked at one point by a Southern senator.
I wonder
so
why.
that the tension still between North and South still exists.
Still goes on. Right?
Yeah, still goes on. So
after
it finally came
1.5 centuries.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about his courage and bravery, and also he had a high tolerance for pain. I mean, he went through a lot.
Yeah, he certainly did. He was in charge at the Battle of Gettysburg, which was one of the pivotal battles of the war. He was in charge of an artillery. He had been trained in artillery training when he was at West Point and loved the artillery. He had been also selected in previous battles to be on the staff of some of the commanding generals, which was a really good way to get promoted and to rise up in the ranks. But he really loved the artillery and what it was capable of doing, and loved being in command of that many men. So he chose to go back to artillery, and he had a battery on the hill, Cemetery Ridge, at Gettysburg on the 3rd of July when Pickett's charge came at him. And he was in effect, the whole ridge was lined with the Union batteries, but his was the one that Pickett's charge was heading right toward. So in effect, he was at ground zero of the charge.
Wow.
And
maybe we can bring up a picture of your cousin up here back in the day when he was a young man. There he is.
that's his West Point uniform for graduation.
Handsome guy.
Yeah, very much so.
And what I mean, he went above and beyond the Call of Duty. I mean,
oh yeah, you get the Medal of Honor for service above and beyond the Call of Duty. Here he is. This is Gettysburg in the 3rd day.
Yes.
And he had been badly wounded. He had 6 cannons originally. There were only 2 operating ones left as Pickett's charge was coming. And his commanding officer said, "Go back, you're wounded, and take your cannons back. You've only got 2 left, we got to save them."
Right.
And Alonzo said, "No, if I break this line and remove the cannons, we'll lose the line and we'll lose the battle. And I'm going to bring these cannons further down to a stone wall where I can get a better angle on the Confederates who are charging up at me at this time."
Strategic point.
Yeah.
And he see how his finger is over the hole on that one cannon. That
Yeah.
was when he was.
Well, there's a couple of things. He was also badly injured at that point. He'd been shot in the gut and was
Right.
basically, as you can see in that picture, holding his intestines in as he was rolling the cannon down to the
Oh, yeah,
wall.
yeah, I see
Yeah,
that.
see
And
him, has his
and-
hand on
and
his
he-
cannon?
he had
I mean,
burnt-
had his hand in the cannon and his hand on his
And
intestines.
he had burnt his finger,
Yeah,
charred
and then-
to the bone.
Right. When they
holding
load
that.
the cannon to fire, he had so many people killed in his battery that he was not only commanding the battery, but he was operating as an artilleryman. And one of the things you do when the cannon is loaded, there's a vent hole, and you put your
Right.
thumb over it, but it has a leather glove kind of over your thumb, so to keep it
Right.
from getting burned. But it had been firing so
So much.
repetitively, it was ruined.
Yeah.
So he put his finger right over the hole and burned his finger to the bone.
And they were actually putting rocks and metal, any debris they could
Yeah,
find
they were
in
out
these
of ammunition
cannons,
at
right?
that point, and they had what's called canister, which is like a soup can, basically.
Right.
And then you load up rocks, anything you
Whatever,
can find,
and it would
stick it in, and
slide
fire
right
it
in.
off. Yeah, it was an amazing battle.
And what do you think the odds of winning this battle? I mean, they had massive amounts of Confederates, right? And this was probably, the turning point, the turning of the tide for the war, right?
Right. Up to this point, Lee had been very successful. He'd outgeneraled the Union generals time after time. And so he thought that he would bring his troops up into Pennsylvania, Northern Territory, out of Virginia, where most of the fighting had been going on.
Right.
And the idea would be that his troops could forage on the Northern Territory
Much
and,
better.
and allow the Southerners in Virginia to recover a bit from the Union
Devastation.
down there all the time. So he brought his troops up, and he thought he would win. And they collided, the Union and the Confederates, in the north of the town of Gettysburg by mistake.
Maybe we could bring up that little map
Yeah,
of
that'd be
Gettysburg
good.
with the red and the blue.
The troops.
The red,
Yeah, here we go.
The red signifies the Confederates.
Right. And the battle started the first day north of Gettysburg, so sort of at the top and beyond.
Right.
And then Lee's troops really decimated the 2 of the Union Corps, the 1st and 11th Corps, and they broke ranks and ran pell-mell as fast as they could all the way through the town of Gettysburg, and then up on a hill called Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill, and they were in total disarray. And at that point, it looked like the battle would have been lost. But
Right.
General Hancock had ridden up, let's see if his name is there, Hancock, yeah, you see it.
Okay.
And with Alonzo and a few other his officers, and they stopped this absolute rout of the Union troops and had them go into battle formation again. So by the end of the day, the amazing thing is that the Union, even though they lost the first day, had the better ground. They had this Cemetery Hill, Cemetery Ridge. It was high ground and higher than where the Confederates were on the left.
See that Cemetery Ridge along the blue line going
Yeah,
up, and then
yeah.
Hancock right above it.
This is often called called a fish hook because you can see the hook of the fish, the hook going
Right.
Slocum, Howard, and then down Hancock, Cemetery Ridge, and then Little Round Top is where it ends. But that was considered like the fish hook formation. It was a very powerful position, and Lee was up against a lot to try to conquer and win against the Union at that point. But he wasn't going to give up, and he told Longstreet, we're going to have a huge cannonade at first, which went on for about an hour and a half. There were about 150 cannons on the Confederate side against maybe about 80 cannons on the Union side. They were trying to loosen up the Union and scare the troops, and then have the big charge come with Pickett. You can see the names Pickett, Trimble, and Pettigrew. It's all called Pickett's Charge now.
Right.
And then you
on the red on the
on the
left
red
here,
coming toward Cemetery Ridge and Hancock.
It was uphill battle for them.
Uphill battle.
Yeah, they got the advantage, so they got the strategic positioning.
Yeah, they're on the
up
hill
above
and could
them,
fire
looking
down on them with all their cannons.
Which was
And the
Cushing's
cannons,
idea.
Yeah, the cannons could stay still because it's really hard to roll cannons along with your troops.
Especially on a mountain.
Yeah,
or something,
they're not very
it's like,
movable.
yeah.
So it was a.
Unless you got a
Back in the
horse or something.
Yeah, in the days of Napoleon, which a lot of the battle plans were made after, they didn't have rifled weapons. So the cannons were just smoothbore. They weren't very accurate. And the same with the guns. And now that improved, so they were rifled, and the bullets and the guns would spin
Spiral.
and were much
and go
more
right
accurate.
On, dead on target.
And so that used to be able, you could make these frontal charges, and you wouldn't lose that many people. But in the Civil War, you'd lose a lot because the guns and the cannons were much more accurate. But they hadn't changed the strategy.
Right.
So basically, Lee sent 13 to 15,000 people out into a huge slaughter.
That would be my next question, about the odds. The odds were probably 13 to 15,000, did you say?
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
And they were outnumbered. I mean, Cushing's men were outnumbered.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, the people on the hill at Cemetery Ridge that day were not that many. And then
like a ballpark figure, not sure, but it was like they were outnumbered at probably 10 to 1 or something like that. I mean, it was a lot of troops coming up.
Yeah, and then some of the troops on the Union side fled or refused to come forward because they were terrified. I mean, you go to Gettysburg now, and it's absolutely beautiful. It is a spectacular setting.
Right.
And then you think of all the people who were fighting there that day, and the noise and the smoke from the cannons, and it must have been the most terrifying thing possible.
Any pictures you want to bring up, like a picture of Gettysburg or any?
Let's see. There's one of the cannons, I think, on the ridge.
Okay.
I believe.
Maybe Justin have a picture of a cannon or up by the ridge. Might have one in this. There we go. Right. That one?
Yeah, that's Alonzo moving his cannon forward to the wall. There's a cyclorama at Gettysburg that a Frenchman painted several years after the battle, and he's interviewed lots and lots of people about it. And it's fascinating to see when you're there. It's been restored, but you can see the extent of the devastation and the huge numbers of people at the battle. And so.
And this is the Gettysburg cyclorama. Here, I don't want to get the glare. This is if you can get a hold of this book also. This is a great book and has great illustrations of all the battles and the Gettysburg battles that went on for 3 days, right?
For 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
And the cyclorama, they used to make these at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s because it was pre-television and pre-movie cameras. They had very rudimentary photography then, but
Right.
if you wanted to sort of give a whole demonstration of what had happened, they'd make these enormous round rooms with the whole of what was happening pictured and painted. So it's quite a
like a mural.
Yeah.
Nice.
A 360-degree mural of the battle.
Could appreciate that. I like expert artwork like these guys have done. This is elaborate in this book. So so he was shot twice, and then numerous injuries. He had charred to the bone.
Yes. Yeah.
The thumb. Then he had a third detrimental wound, of course.
Yeah, he was shot in the head and died.
Eventually. And then George E. Pickett's attack came up, but this was definitely the turning of the tide for the
Right,
South.
this was the last time. The next day after the battle, Lee started back into Virginia and crossed the Potomac River a few days later and basically did not come back onto northern soil again. So this is called the high water mark of the Confederacy. It's as far north as they ever got. After Alonzo was killed, a Confederate general named Armistead. They'd all been to West Point together. These men all knew each other, the leaders.
Right, right.
And here they are fighting against each other. And Armistead broke over the wall with 200 men, came up to where Alonzo's guns were sitting unused. I mean, everybody had fled or was lying down and pretending to be dead. And then Armistead was killed, and that's considered the high, and there's a monument there to him, the high water, well, he was shot, he died later, high water mark of the Confederacy. So after this, Lee took all his men back into Virginia. The war went on for 2 more years, unfortunately.
Oh, wow.
Because there are a lot more killing, and it
Right.
was devastating.
But it was going downhill for them at that
Yeah,
point.
they didn't have the munitions, they didn't have the people, they didn't have the artillery to keep up. And
And the food to keep the army on its feet,
yeah,
probably
it
either.
was,
I mean,
yeah, there were a lot of
from the
people who were
devastation.
fighting this war barefoot
Right.
and marching 30 miles a day barefoot. So
Food and clothing and supplies were,
very difficult. The
Yes.
whole logistics was very difficult to fight this war.
and also you'd mentioned that he got his start at West Point and was also buried at West Point. Is that correct?
That's right. It's interesting because you think, well, there were a lot of people fighting at Gettysburg. A lot of people were killed. Why was Alonzo separated out? And maybe it's just something that just happened 152 years later that people say, oh, yeah, he did something pretty cool. But in fact, he was recognized that day. There was a New York Times reporter there, and he wrote an article that appeared July 6th. This battle was on July 3rd, when Alonzo was killed, talking about Alonzo and his bravery. Poems were written about Alonzo. I think there are 3 or 4 of them. I mean, he was very celebrated at the time for his bravery. It was very much recognized then and there. What he had done was way beyond the call of duty. He had every reason to be off that field and not stay there. But he said,
Right.
I'll die trying.
Yep.
And
do
he
or
did.
die. And he
Yeah.
had not yet begun to fight, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we can bring up a couple of pictures.
Here's Obama in the Roosevelt room. That's Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, okay.
Reading the citation. for-
Bully. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's fantastic.
And there's the Medal of Honor. And
Oh.
again, the Medal of Honor and the format of it has changed over time.
Yes.
So if you go to Gettysburg, they have other medals of honor there, but this is the most recent one
Prestigious,
and the
right.
most, yes, most prestigious. This is the most recent one given in the most recent iteration of the Medal of Honor.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And the Medal of Honor we've gifted it, the family gifted it to Gettysburg, so that's where it will be forever.
Nice.
'Cause-
that was nice of you.
Well,
to
when we first learned,
make that public.
yeah,
for everybody,
when we first
you know.
learned that Alonzo finally was going to get the Medal of Honor, we all said, this doesn't belong on our family fireplace mantle, so it belongs to the public.
And this is are you at the Pentagon?
Yes, we're at
Perhaps?
the Hall of Heroes in the Pentagon. We had a private tour of the Pentagon and a lunch with a lot of generals. It was really fun. And then this is the name in the Hall of Heroes, and Alonzo's name is being added. There's my aunt there.
Is that
with
your
the-
aunt again? Okay.
Yeah, with the plaque that they're putting up that has Alonzo's name added on it.
And
It's down on the left-hand side.
She's a Loring.
She's a Loring,
Right,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah. So there we are. They're putting the plaque up. And,
Beautiful.
it was a wonderful day. It was a wonderful celebration, and
So after he died, how old was he about when he died?
he was 22 years old.
22 years old.
Yeah. He went to, it's interesting, people grew up earlier then. They didn't live as long, for one
Right.
thing.
So that was
He's-
a ripe old age.
yeah,
maybe,
that's what-
right.
he started West Point at age 16.
Wow.
His brother William started the Naval Academy at age 14. So people really grew up fast, and especially I think with the war coming on, that they graduated Alonzo's class a year early so that they would be available as officers to go into the officer corps. So they're supposed to have spent another year at West Point, but they didn't get to do that. So they really pushed him out, and you had to be responsible very young.
Right. And they have actually a marker at Gettysburg for him, and then a marker at West Point for his gravestone and
Yes,
gravesite.
yeah,
like
he was.
that.
So after he was killed, a few days later, that's what they had the service up at the chapel in West Point for him, and a lot of very important people and generals came to his service. Again, showing the recognition that what he had done was above and beyond the
Right,
call of duty. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah,
It's amazing, and You also worked as an attorney for years too, right?
Right.
You yourself.
Right. Yeah,
right?
I've been
So
retired for about 15 years.
That's admirable. I mean, that's amazing too.
Well, I've really enjoyed my retirement. Right now I'm writing a book about Alonzo.
Oh.
And
so you can do the book. You know how to do the book format, right?
yes.
I don't know how to do that. That's amazing. And how far along are you on the book?
I'm about in my 4th draft. And,
Oh wow!
I hope
Really?
in a year maybe I'll be able to get it published or get to publishers and see if I can get it published, or I'll
Wow.
self-publish it.
Yeah. And how many pages is it about? You think?
It's about 24 chapters.
Right.
So there'll be a lot of pictures in it.
Okay.
So maybe 200, 250 pages.
Wow. And you're already on the 4th draft.
Yes, yes.
That's amazing. How many hours a day do you spend writing, you think?
Probably about 4 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just steady? Yeah.
Oh, I get up and do other things. Or
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes I feel like I live in 1863,
Right.
and then I have to come back to 2018
Right. Oh,
and do
yeah.
something in the current phase. Yeah.
Use the microwave, right? Or
Yeah.
something, and then go back to the Civil War. That's fantastic, the 4th draft. So I don't know book format. I write in screenplay format. I tried to write in book format. Then I noticed every time they start a sentence, they indent 3 letters, right? So it's like, and I'm like, because you hear they indent 3 letters.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then they
starting the
And then
paragraph.
when that's over, they stop, and then there's a gap, and then
Yeah.
it's like, it's much different than screenplay format.
Well, from being a lawyer, I'm really used to writing, so it's a very comfortable
It's
format.
the same
for me.
format? And,
Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
all the footnotes and all that is just like being a lawyer. You have to do all that stuff when you're writing your briefs, so I'm used to it.
I tried to write in book format. It's very difficult. I got about 80 pages. It's
I couldn't write a screenplay.
I got like a 2-hour movie, and I only got 80 pages in the book. Right? I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? So, yeah, I'm not very good at the book format. But how long do you think before you'll be finished with this writing?
I'd say in a year and a half, hopefully.
Really?
I'll give you a copy of it if you get it done.
And autograph it
Sure.
and sign?
Sure.
Fantastic, right? Thank you. And what year did he die? Was it 1863?
1863.
1863.
July 3rd, 1863.
And so that's like 151 years total. This is like, so he was a brave man. He endured a lot of injuries, and I'm glad that he finally was awarded the Medal of Honor and Valor.
It was a wonderful thing. He deserved it way long time ago, but it was wonderful he finally got it. And the other thing, with reading family letters, you really get a feeling of his whole family, and it's like talking to them almost. I mean, they were wonderful people. In the old days,
Right.
people wrote a lot of letters, so you really got a sense of their sense of humor, and what was important to them. And it was interesting to watch as the country was falling apart leading into the Civil War, their views on what was happening. So it was wonderful to have that record.
Nice. So we got a few minutes left. See how fast the half hour goes by? I mean,
Yeah.
when you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
It goes by quickly. Any final thoughts or shout outs to your son? I know we're going to make a copy of this for your son too, right? So he can watch it as well.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And
all
so if you have
the
any
yeah.
final thoughts or shout outs you want to do to friends and family members, and
Well, I guess there are other stories to tell, and maybe we'll tell them
we
later.
have to do a part 2. Maybe.
About William, the Navy hero.
Oh, his brother.
His brother.
Right.
And then he had another brother, Howard, who was killed by the Indians after the war in Arizona, kind of like Custer.
Wow.
Similar
And
situation.
did you say Custer was at West Point with
Custer
Cushing?
and Alonzo were good friends, and they were both in
That's
the same
amazing
class
in itself.
at West Point.
I mean, what are the
Yeah.
odds of that? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And he was in this Barrack D, where sort of all the fun-loving people went.
The interesting people,
Yeah,
right?
the
The
interesting
colorful people all hung out, right? Yeah. Yeah, can you imagine hanging out with Custer?
Yeah.
And it's like,
It was-
he's a wild man. He's a card. You know?
Actually, Alonzo's roommate at one point, except he got kicked out because he flunked out. But
Oh.
Custer was the last in his class,
Oh, is
which
that
was
right?
considered the goat. You were the
Oh,
goat
is
if
that
you're the
it?
last in your class.
Ah.
And he thought his roommate was going to be the last, but then he actually flunked out, and Custer squeaked in and got graduated. So yeah, it was. The
That's
West Point
funny.
history is very interesting. A lot of tradition.
Right.
And you get to read about it. I think it's probably still the same there now. Yeah.
Pretty strict.
The other thing I'd like to say, if we have another minute,
Of course.
is that
Anything.
at Gettysburg, they use a lot of the battlefield events and who was there to do leadership training for school children and corporations and the military and government people who come through.
Oh, okay.
So they will use the events of the time, and they use Alonzo quite a bit for the West Point people who come through about, there comes a time when you make a decision.
Right,
You're going to
right.
go and save your country, or you're going to retreat.
Yes.
And so he is used as an example of,
He did the right thing.
He did the right thing,
And changed history.
yeah, but he certainly
Completely.
lost his life doing it, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'll do a couple of shout outs for my sponsors and such. And also we'll put this on probably within an hour, unless another show's coming in. I'll put it on YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Google, Facebook,
Wow.
this, that, the other. So it'll be all of the social media within an hour. I should have that up.
Wow.
And then the show will air. We might even boot it, this show up for next month. This is April. We might have this show in May.
Okay.
And we'll boot whoever did the last show. Make him wait till next. We'll bump him back a little bit. I know this month we're showing the hardest punching man in history. I saw it last night, a little bit of it, so that was pretty cool.
Good.
Middleweight champion of the world. He's retired. So my shout outs today are, I got to do about my sponsors and such like that. And so guests of the Tyler Vision show stay at the Magnolia House. Transportation provided by Shane One Limousine. And we'd like to thank our guest, Jessica Loring, for coming on our show. Thanks so much for being here. We'll have to
I enjoyed it. Thank you very
again real
much,
soon,
Robert.
do a follow-up show
Yeah, be fun.
on his cousin, too, in the Navy. So, and we'd like to thank our sponsors. Sal, the flower guy, brings these flowers every week. Thank
Beautiful.
you, Sal. He's right across the street from the high school over here on Jefferson. And I would like to present these
Ooh.
to you.
Ooh, they're gorgeous. Thank you.
I'll
I
just
really
move 'em real
enjoy
close by. We can put them wherever you want, or leave
I'll
them.
just leave them right here.
We'll
till
leave them
after.
right there. And
Yeah.
and you could take
Thank
these
you.
home, and
And I will.
and keep them, and they'll last for years. They might like go through some seasonal changes, and also we want to thank Doc's Trophy Shop for bringing our music awards and our special awards for our clients. This one is our next week's show. We can't tell you about that, right? But he is a great guy too, as well. And also, I want to thank Hair in Motion. Also, Emmy Lou's Diner over in the River Park area, in that neck of the woods, in that neighborhood. And pretty much, we're out of here. And God bless you and yours. Until next time, America. And we'll see you guys later.
Big C music on the track.
If you don't know me by now, you must be living under a rock. A rock named St. Thomas, so I'm the cream of the crop. I rise to the top, I'm the king of hip hop. 74 El Dorado bumping down the block. California Love by Ronnie and Bot. I guess you know by now that we just don't stop. We got it, hit me, going on now. We got it, hit me, going on now. We got it, hit me, going on now. Came straight out of Napa, Northern California. This the last time, I'm gonna warn ya. Visa, MasterCard, Express, forget it. I got cash, I don't need credit. I made my money the old-fashioned way. I inherited it, punk, what of it, okay?